How you guys all doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, live today on Thursday, October 17th. We got the start of the NFL Week 7 games tonight, kicking off between the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints over here at 8:15 Eastern Time. We're going to talk about that and preview that game. Also, for the rest of the show, we got some questions that I thought of, some scenarios, some things I wanted to go over with you guys to get your guys' thoughts and just talk about them, like some of the trades that I think must happen before the trade deadline. Also, the teams that need to win this week in order for their chances to stay alive or to avoid, just blowing the whole thing up. Plus, also, we're going to talk about the NFC North as well. So a lot to cover on today's show. Make sure to stick around. And before we get started, for you guys that want to get involved in the show and want to leave any questions, comments, or just any of your opinions that you'd want to share, please don't hesitate to do it. We always value your guys' insight and opinions on anything you guys have to say. So to make sure that's a guarantee and to make sure I see it and feature it on the show, there's an easy way to go about that just by using the new Super Chat feature that we have available to you guys now. Just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box, you can send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel, and we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we always appreciate whenever you guys can do that for us. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive, as exciting, and just conversational. I always love hearing what you guys have to say, so please don't hesitate to get involved with the show and leave anything you have to say using that new Super Chat feature. But with that now being the case, we can talk about the game that we have in store for us tonight. A very interesting matchup for a couple reasons, right? Week 7 kicks off tonight in the home of the Super Bowl this year. There in the New Orleans Superdome, the Caesar Superdome, where the Broncos will travel down there to New Orleans to face the Saints. The Denver Broncos currently sitting at 3-3 after a loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Saints are trying to do anything possible that they can to stop this 4-game losing streak that they have going on. After starting so promising at 2-0, they haven't been able to stop the bleeding. And some of these games, got away from them a little bit, like the Eagles game or even the Falcons game as well. They've been in a couple close ones, but this past week against the Buccaneers wasn't so pretty. Unfortunately, Derek Carr got hurt against the Chiefs, so you didn't really get to finish out strong like you would have in that game. But it's been pretty tough because these losses haven't been blowouts by any means. But you feel like you're close, and then you just haven't been able to get over the hump. So that's something that I'm sure the Saints are going to try and get over tonight against a young Denver Broncos team that I think has surprised a lot of people. And what's interesting about this game is that head coach Sean Payton returns to face his former team in his former home down there in New Orleans. If you guys recall, Sean Payton spent 10.5 years as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, 9 playoff appearances in that time, and a Super Bowl. Impeccable stuff from Sean Payton down there in New Orleans, but now he's on enemy lines. He's on the other side trying to lead the Broncos to a win here against his former team. And what else is interesting is that the Saints head coach, Dennis Allen, obviously, he spent 12 seasons on Sean Payton's staff, and the last 6 seasons in Sean Payton's tenure there for the New Orleans Saints, the last 6 seasons he was the defensive coordinator there. So obviously before he got promoted in 2022 when Sean Payton stepped down. But these two guys know each other very, very well, and it just adds to the aura, the mystique around this game, which I think is super fascinating to kind of make a decision on as of right now. And on this game, it's interesting just based on the fact Sean Payton and whatnot, but also the Saints have a lot on their plate with not as many of their star players playing, right? The biggest one being Derek Carr being labeled as doubtful, but like it says, I don't think he'll play. Being listed as doubtful, it's not out technically, but usually when someone's listed as doubtful, it usually means they're not going to play. We don't really know when Derek is supposed to come back. It could be next week. It could be a couple weeks from now. But it looks like it's going to be Spencer Rattler again. He got his first start, the rookie quarterback, last week against the Buccaneers, and it was going pretty well through the first half or 3 quarters. I forget how long into that game it was before ultimately the Buccaneers just pulled away because they have more offense, because they have more firepower on that team. The Saints defense wasn't able to hold, and their offense, quite frankly, also just wasn't able to keep up. So it was really close at one point if you were watching the game. But then you see the final scoreline 51-27, and you're thinking like it wasn't close at all. But in reality, it was pretty surprising how Spencer Rattler came out, and he is pretty much set to have his second game tonight. And also, some more similarities between these two teams. 2 rookie quarterbacks starting in this game. Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. 2 guys that obviously had a lot of the success in college and whatnot at Oregon, and Spencer Rattler at South Carolina. And I don't think I really expected Spencer Rattler to start this year. And even when Derek Carr got hurt, he didn't come in right away. It was the other quarterback that came in. So Rattler got the vote of confidence from Dennis Allen, and he played pretty well. And now he's set to face off tonight against Bo Nix, a first-round rookie quarterback, obviously drafted by the Broncos. So that'll be interesting to see who kind of outduels the other one. And just giving you guys some more points on the Saints here before we move on to the matchups. A lot of injuries for the Saints, obviously. The injury report hasn't really come out yet definitively yet for some of these teams in terms of inactive and active, but there's not going to be any Chris Olave. He's out with a concussion on a short week. Rashid Shaheed, their other wide receiver, is out because he is getting surgery on his meniscus injury, and based on that surgery, it's going to determine if he's able to come back at some point this year or if that's going to be it for his 2024 season. So a really tough break there for Shaheed, who was having a pretty good season. Also, Taysom Hill is doubtful tonight, taking away another offensive option for the Saints and Spencer Rattler. So that means that the receivers tonight, the prominent weapons for a rookie quarterback, are going to be Bob Means, Mason Tipton, and Cedric Wilson Jr., and Juwan Johnson, of course, at tight end, which it wouldn't surprise me if you guys didn't know who most of those guys were. And that's what the Saints have to deal with tonight in trying to kickstart this offense back again and trying to get something going, because obviously starting 2-0 and then now being 2-4, it's not where you want to be, because you feel like you've shown your true potential. But now with the injuries and stuff like that and catching some tough breaks, it's extremely frustrating, I'm sure, for the Saints. And also their defense, it's been all right in moments, but mostly for the entire season, it really hasn't been there, or at least up to par like what we saw from them last year, where this year now they're allowing the most yards per game, almost allowing 400 yards total per game, which is absurd for this veteran defense, this experienced defense that always seems to stay together throughout the offseason. That's not a good number to give up. So as maybe inexperienced or not as heavily armed as the Broncos might be, giving up almost 400 yards to anybody on average seems to be like the Broncos have something to work with there, despite also them not having Pat Surtain in this game, also because of a concussion. Josh Reynolds for the Broncos was put on IR, so they're down a couple of their big pieces, but still, unlike New Orleans, this defense for the Denver Broncos has been relentless with the quarterback pressure. They're second in the NFL with 22 sacks, only behind the Giants with 26, and it keeps them in the game a lot. It keeps them close, within arm's reach of a lot of teams, and it might fall on Bo Nix most of the time to kind of deliver, but in this game where the opposition doesn't really have so much firepower as well, it's a game that I think it's really there for both of these teams. And now getting into the matchups a little bit that are really going to matter mostly for this game in determining it. fall along those lines of those injuries, right? We have the Saints receivers, the Bob Means, the Cedric Wilsons, the Mason Tiptons of the world, like I just mentioned, going up against this Denver secondary that doesn't have their best player. How are they able to produce? Are they able to produce? And is the Denver secondary able to stand up without their best player? That's going to be something to watch out for. Kind of also which receiving group and which defense as well kind of helps their rookie quarterback out a lot more. So that'll be interesting and important to keep track of. Also, going a little bit further up for both of these teams, the Denver defensive line going up against the Saints injured offensive line, because the Saints again are not going to have Cesar Ruiz. They're I'm pretty sure they're also down their center. I'm pretty sure as well he's not back yet. So their running game is so important to their entire offense, and if you can't get that going, if you can't have a push sort of say to push the defensive line back, obviously it's going to be ineffective. For as much also that you don't really have the receivers on the outside, it could be looking a bit dire for the Saints. And the Broncos, like we just mentioned, they're second in the NFL in sacks. So if you're not able to hold up, it could be a much rougher outing for Spencer Rattler. And I think that's where this game's going to go. I'm predicting that the Broncos are going to go on the road. Sean Payton's going to walk into his old house, put his feet up, and get the win for his new team. And if everybody was healthy, I might go with the Saints in this game just because I like Olave a lot, and Raheem Shahid's having a good game. And of course that running game looked very well for the Saints, but that's not the case, so I can't really just base it off of that if they're missing all of their best players. So I'm going to go with Denver. They have the Cortland Suttons, they have the Javonte Williams to kind of lean on, and I think also on the defensive side of the ball, more so than not, Sean Payton, I'm sure, is going to make Spencer Rattler very uncomfortable in this game. He's going to send a lot of pressure at him and force him to make all the right decisions in each of his throws, and any sort of mistake can cost them in this game. So I feel like that's sort of where this game's going to go down, and I'm going to pick the Broncos to win this game. They'll go to 4-3, and which is pretty good for them so far in this year, where everybody thought it was going to be, just this awful situation. Being 4-3, I think, is as good as you can get for the Broncos, and unfortunately for the Saints, they're going to drop even further into this hole and become 2-5 after tonight's game. But let me know if you guys agree, disagree with that. The game is set to kick off 8:15 Eastern time over here where I'm at, so we'll keep updates on anything if any injury news has come in while we're doing the show. But now we're going to move on to another topic, some more questions that I had on my mind now that we are in Week 7. This next segment, we're going to talk about what trades, the top 5 trades that need to happen before the trade deadline comes on November the 5th. I have a list here of some trades that I would like to see happen, but also I feel like are necessary for these teams to really make a difference already heading towards the second half of the season. So we're going to come back with that, and we're going to discuss all my points when we return after this quick break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Thank you for all you guys joining back into this second segment. And in this second segment, we got to talk about, or we are going to talk about, trades. A lot of trade talk is happening now, obviously because of the day that we had a couple days ago with Devontae Adams going to the Jets, and similarly, just a few hours later, Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills. Both going into the AFC East, making it a lot more interesting going forward, obviously, when those two teams face off again. But it got me thinking of all these trades now, who's on the trade block, what teams need to make trades, and why that is, right? Obviously, with the trade deadline coming up in less than a month now, a lot of teams I feel like should be looking at this market to kind of try and upgrade certain positions that I feel like are a bit obvious now at this point, and I feel like they would really make a difference, truly, in some of these rosters. Well, I guess I should say for most of them. For most of them, it'll make a big change, but still, all of these are pretty obvious to make. I got a couple surprises in there, but we're gonna start off with talking about the Detroit Lions. I think the team that is certainly the most legitimate out of this list that I have, the Lions are definitely the closest to Super Bowl contention of this list, and even still, with that being the case, they need to make a trade. They need to make a trade for a pass rusher, in my opinion, because we now know that Aiden Hutchinson is going to miss the remainder of the year, and I know, obviously, he's massive, right? Whenever you lose a guy like that, you're talking about what TJ Watt, what Myles Garrett, what Max Crosby, what Micah, Nick Bosa mean to all their respective teams, right? That's what Aiden Hutchinson was kind of trending towards being, if he wasn't already there, for the Detroit Lions, and he made them Super Bowl contenders, right? He played a major role in that, and the fact now that he's not going to be there, you might think that this defense is still very good. You know, Brian Branch is fantastic. Jack Campbell, their linebacker, is very good. They added at secondary with Terrion Arnold, Carlton Davis. They got guys, certainly, but the pass rusher, just focusing on getting to the quarterback and making them uncomfortable, you need at least one very, very good guy in there. And the fact that now he's gone for this Lions team, they might still, be decent, but I feel like if you're kind of like decent here or there, if you can't constantly be a threat that the offensive line has to double you or just know where you are at all times, the kind of quarterbacks that are in the NFL nowadays, they're too talented, and the offenses are too skilled and too put together to really let that bother them or get in their way, right? Because especially in this division, you have Jordan Love, Caleb Williams now, and Sam Darnold playing out of his mind. If you can't get to any of them, Kevin O'Connell is going to scheme you up. Matt LaFleur certainly is going to scheme you up. And the Browns, while their offense might not be, with Shane Waldron, might not be prolific yet, they got guys like Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, all these guys that can beat you just individually if they can't do it collectively, schematically yet. So you need someone to always be there trying to make those guys uncomfortable, or at least make them sweat a little bit more. And I don't want to, make it such a dig at the other guys, but, Aiden Hutchinson, I think we're talking about a different level of guy here. So he's going to be a huge loss for them. And, they're very fortunate that their offensive line, their offensive scheme with Ben Johnson, and their offensive line, their running back duo, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, are very good, some of the best in the NFL at their positions. But you do get your games where, like we saw against Tampa Bay, where the Lions just falter in the red zone, right? It's not so easy. It might seem easy because you're so close to the end zone, right, obviously, but you do have those games where I think they were like 1 for 7 or 1 for 6 or something in the red zone in terms of getting touchdowns at home, mind you. So it's harder for the offense, I feel like, to always constantly be there than it is for the defense to limit a team to less than 20 or 21 points. I think that's bare minimum of how good this Lions team can be. And if any defense can limit any offense, or most offenses, to under 20 points, you're going to have a great chance to win all these games. So I feel that's more likely scenario to get a trade done for him. Zadarius Smith is a name that I've seen thrown around with the Lions, just because Cleveland, they've already offloaded their wide receiver Amari Cooper. So sitting at 1-5, basically looking like they're giving up on the season. Why not get something out of Zadarius Smith? That would be interesting. And Max Crosby is a long shot, but the Raiders don't look so secure either. But also, I don't feel like they're going to give away their best player after they already gave away Devontae Adams. That would be such a huge step backwards to lose both of them during the season as well. So that was a long shot, but who knows, right? Those are some of the trade candidates that I think the Bears, or the Lions should be targeting. Then also we have, moving on to the next team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? It couldn't be more obvious that they need wide receiver help. The kind of numbers that those guys are putting up, it's like they have basically like me out there running routes. Najee Harris is their second leading receiver. He's the running back, so also that tells a lot of how this offense is running. Outside of just George Pickens, none of the other guys can get open, or the scheme, or whether you think it's the quarterback, they're just not getting the ball. And obviously how you watch the game, right? You don't know, you don't have the vantage point of seeing who's open and not, right? So that's one thing. And they desperately need that, right? Obviously going forward, right? Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, despite who's in at quarterback, neither of them are going to help these guys get opened just by whether it's Justin back there or Russ. They have to get open on themselves, and they haven't really created so much separation to make it glaringly obvious that it's more on the quarterback than the wide receivers. I wouldn't say that's fair. And also, they've managed to get by already at 4-2, where you could make an argument they could be 5-1 or maybe even undefeated, but that would be kind of stretching it a little bit. But they've certainly been in all these games, and with that being the case, their tougher games are coming up. So the fact that you have this opportunity to get a little bit better when the better defenses like the Chiefs, the Ravens, obviously, the Browns, even though they're 1-5, they have a good defense. The Commanders are all going to be opponents you see down the line, the Eagles as well. You need to do something now, because you can't just try and scrape by and think people are going to take you any more seriously. I feel like that would just be ignorant or naive of them. So the Steelers have to try and make a move. The wide receiver market is pretty vast out there. You know, you have DeAndre Hopkins, seems to be a popular option among a lot of people. Mike Williams, I say DeAndre Hopkins, but Mike Williams seems to be the favorite just because, you know, Devontae's going over there kind of pushing Mike Will out the door. So those two guys seem to be the 1A, 1B in terms of favorites. Also, Deontay Johnson's probably out there, which would be so ironic and just typical for the Steelers to trade back for a guy that they traded away at the beginning of the season, but that would not surprise me at all. And my sort of pipe dream scenario would be that they trade for John Mechie. I just feel like he's very, very good and a very underrated receiver. We haven't really seen it too much yet in terms of regular season games, but he has been dealing with those health issues, right? I don't want to specify which one in case I'm wrong, but he's been dealing with that, causing him to miss his rookie season. Then he came back, and he had a great preseason, but the Texans are just overloaded at that spot. So I feel like John Mechie, if he's given an opportunity, I feel like he would take it and run with it. And I think he should be traded. I feel like he should and be given an opportunity to do more, and he's not getting that in Houston. So that's my ideal scenario, but I feel like it's going to be Mike Will or DeAndre Hopkins potentially for the Steelers. Also, this one's a bit of a surprise in terms of trade because it's not necessarily what this team could use right now like the other two, but the Miami Dolphins trading for Bryce Young, I thought would be so surprising and to a lot of people unlikely, but I would totally understand why this move would make sense because you think of Bryce in Carolina, I think that situation's done. You can't go back with them benching him and having probably another rebuilding season where I wouldn't be surprised if they tear everything down. It wouldn't be a great situation for Bryce anyway if he stayed, so there's that. And obviously Tua is expected to come back this year, so you might be thinking, why would you trade for a quarterback where your original starter is supposed to come back and you're paying him a ton of money? And that makes sense, but you can't really anybody can't really sit here and just say that they're 100% sure that Tua, you don't want to think it or put it out there, but it is a concern with the concussions and things like that. People were already calling for him to really consider retiring, and he's supposed to come back, which is great if he thinks he can do that. But you, as an organization, in terms of just the away from the personal sort of things and stuff like that, as an organization, you have to think long term. And I think with Bryce Young, at this point where his market value is, where else are you going to get another chance to get a former number one overall pick for this low of value at any time during this period with Mike McDaniel as your coach and things like that? So I feel like he would fit great for this offense, more so finesse and timing that he could take advantage of, that I don't think he really was getting used the right way in Carolina either. So that one's a bit of a stretch. I would love to see it happen because I think it would be a great possible replacement for Tua if he decides to just move on, or if, hopefully it never happens again, but if he does suffer another hit, something like that, that's a pretty big scare. You have Bryce Young there, so that would be one that I would totally understand that could happen. Then also looking at the last two here, the Dallas Cowboys, this is the one that might not make a huge change because I think the Dallas Cowboys certainly need some more than just this one player, but I would really like them to try and trade for a running back is the position, but I really think that Travis Etienne would be one that would be fascinating for the Dallas Cowboys to try and get because of the fact that the Jaguars are looking very bad right now. And I know Travis Etienne is sort of dealing with an injury right now, but also it looks like Tank Bigsby is kind of taking over that job just a little bit. So the fact that that's going on, the fact that they're 1-5, and if they lose this week to the Patriots, then I feel like this team really has a great chance of just kind of splitting everything up, breaking the band up, and Travis Etienne, you could get something back from him that's pretty enticing. And who else than the Cowboys needing some sort of running game to try and go get him? They keep getting crucified for missing out on Derrick Henry, so this move to me makes a lot of sense. And if you're not able to get Travis Etienne, maybe, I know they've mentioned Nick Chubb, but I think that's impossible. I know the Browns are really bad too, but there's no way they just give away Nick Chubb after just coming back from injury. And also maybe someone like Miles Sanders as a cheap sort of, just like a cheap option where you just try and bring in some help regardless of who it is from Carolina would be something to look at considering his situation there. But I really would love Travis Etienne with the Cowboys. I think that would help them tremendously. And lastly here, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't think it's a secret that they need another wide receiver. Quentin Johnson has looked better. Ladd McConkey, someone I'm a big fan of, but I still feel like with the amount of receivers that are out there, they could certainly benefit with adding someone on a cheap deal like Mike Will, getting him back there on his cheap one-year deal that he signed with the Jets. Also, Deontay Johnson would be pretty nice with Justin Herbert. I would really like that pairing. DeAndre Hopkins obviously is there as a short-term option if you want to really go that route. And Darius Slayton, I could see being a sneaky candidate also for the Chargers. Just like their group of receivers, none of them really jump out of the page at you, but adding a guy like Darius Slayton, I also think that fits that mold. And all those guys, I say that they don't jump out of the page, but they've been pretty impressive so far. And Darius Slayton, that game that he had against the Seahawks, kind of showed what he can be capable of. And I think with Jim Harbaugh there and the offense that they're running pretty run heavy, I think he could benefit off of that, off of play actions and an extremely accurate quarterback like Justin Herbert. So that would be the last one that I would be looking out for as a potential trade candidate to try and go over to the Chargers. But those are the top five. Those are the top five that I'm really looking forward to and thinking that each of those players can make a big change except for the Cowboys in their new situations if things were to fall out that way. And hopefully we see a lot of trades because I love talking about them. I love the suddenness of it, and I might like it than watching some certain games that I see each and every week. I'm just being honest with you guys. It excites me more than some of the games that we have seen so far in the NFL. And speaking of games that we have seen, we're going to get into the game picks now we're going to go to a quick break, and when we return, we have part 1 of Week 7, the game picks and analysis in today's show. We got about 6 games we're going to go through and look into what makes up each game, what makes up each matchup, and ultimately picking a winner. So we'll be right back with that. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Thank you guys for joining me back here on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to now look ahead to the weekend and talk about some of the upcoming games that we have here in Week 7 in the NFL. We got part 1 today. We're going to split it up again because I just feel like time's sake wise, it gives us enough time to look at each game and not feel rushed to try and get through the entire slate. So part 2 will be in tomorrow's show before we shut it all down for the weekend. So getting into part 1 and looking at the first slate of games that I have on here, as you see on your screen, we have 6 matchups on here and a lot of the big-time matchups, right? I think I have both of the most exciting games on here. So we're going to start off with one of them, that being the Houston Texans traveling to Green Bay and taking on the Packers, 2 of the best young, exciting, talented teams, 2 of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL right now in both of these squads. They both have great records. One's 4-2, the other one is 4-1 without their bye week. So it's going to be an exciting game. I think it has a lot of star power, obviously, right? You're talking about Jordan Love and CJ, like I said, Stephon Diggs, Jalen Reed, Romeo Doubs, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, a lot of household names, and most of them, like I only mentioned, are on offense, but Xavier McKinney has been a stud so far, Jair Alexander, obviously, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, and on the Houston side as well, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie. There's stars everywhere on both of these rosters. It's going to be an awesome game, and Green Bay is starting to kind of put things together. We're starting to see their potential last week against the Cardinals and even a little bit against the Rams with Jordan Love coming back from that injury. I think he's slowly getting back to the Jordan Love we saw towards the end of the year last year, which is a great sign for them. And the Texans, they've just looked unstoppable on offense regardless. But I think with Joe Mixon coming back and without having Nico Collins, you'd want to have everybody. But I think Joe Mixon certainly being back has made them look a lot more well-balanced and a lot more potent on offense. More dynamic, really, knowing that they could run the ball very well and pass it as well. But I'm going to go with Green Bay in this game. I'm going to go with the Packers because they're at home, so I think they play a lot better there. But also Houston lost pretty convincingly to a fellow NFC North team in the Minnesota Vikings, which the Packers played pretty well against. And I know a lot of different factors go into each matchup, but also I feel like the Texans are going to be down Jimmy Ward. He's not quite ready to be back. He's one of their safeties. And, there's obviously going to be no Nico Collins in this game either. And you can certainly tell a little bit of a difference there when CJ has Nico out there and he really trusts him, it seems like, the most out of anybody, than when he's not out there, right? It's not to say that he has a bad relationship with Stephon or Tank, but I just feel like he trusts Nico Collins, and him not being out there, I think it kind of throws some things off. It doesn't look quite 100% like you would expect. So I like the Packers in this game. Their defense is very underrated. I think Xavier McKinney, I just briefly mentioned him. I think he polices things back there in the secondary as good as anybody right now. He leads the NFL in interceptions. So that's a guy that they have to look out for. And I think they're just going to be able to edge out the Texans in this game. So the Texans will fall to 4-2, if I'm not mistaken, and the Packers will go to 5-2 on the year. Then, just moving down the line here, down one row, we got the New York Jets traveling to the Pittsburgh Steelers in what could be, or what actually is, Davante Adams' debut, probably, and what could be Russell Wilson's debut as well. Adams, his first game with the Jets this week could potentially be on Sunday Night Football after they just suffered another loss. He could come in right away and save their season with a great performance. I'm very much prepared for that emotionally and just as a analyst, I guess you could say, being a fan of the Steelers and just trying to be unbiased. It feels like it's so typical how the Jets have not really been convincing. Then, of course, the week that they're playing the Steelers, Davante Adams decides to come in, and I wouldn't be surprised if this offense looks completely like we've never seen them at all this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron goes out there and throws for like 3 touchdowns, probably all to Davante Adams. Davante has like 120 yards. This offense is moving up and down the field like they're in training camp or something. Not to discredit the Steelers, but I've seen this game, this story kind of play out too many times for me to go into this game. I'm still wanting the Steelers to win, but I've seen this movie too many times where things just fall perfectly in line for the other team, and to think that the Jets are not going to look completely different and that Rodgers isn't going to improve a lot with having his guy back there, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I will not do it. I will not give myself the false hope. The Steelers are going to have a chance, I believe, in this game, but to come out and win the game, I feel like this is set up perfectly for the Jets and also the Steelers. I wasn't a big fan of kind of half-weighing it with their quarterbacks, right? If you say that they didn't say that Justin was their starter, but if Justin's 4-2 in 1 year, or in the first 6 games of the season, and he's doing pretty well, not doing anything to really lose the job, and then you want to kind of edge Russell Wilson in there and see what you have in him, I don't really like half-weighing things like that, especially at the quarterback position. So I feel like that's going to be just getting in the way of everything for the Steelers. So I'm going to go with the Jets in this one. They certainly need it more because if they fall to 2-5, it's going to be really bad for them on Monday. So they're going to get the win. Probably a close game nonetheless in Pittsburgh with a very lively crowd there for the Steelers to see if they can beat the Jets in this game. So that'll be a great game as well on Sunday Night Football, but I'm going to go with the Jets. Then this next game, again down one row, is a very fascinating one to me because I feel like it could have a lot of consequences for the Jaguars if they don't win this game. It's Drake May's second start over there in London. We have another early game, another full day of football from 9:30 in the morning to about like 11:30 at night, which is awesome. And Drake May in the first game, it looks like they got destroyed 41-21, but I think looking at the game, the storyline of the scoreboard says one thing, but if you look at Drake May, the way that he played, that offense looked as good as it has in any of the games that they played with Jacoby Brissett. And I wasn't a big fan of it, like I let you guys know on here, to bring in Drake May this early, but they've reaped the benefits already after 1 week. So what I didn't like is starting Drake May. What I like even less is pulling him and sitting him in the same season. That would be really, really bad. But it doesn't look like it's heading towards that way. Drake May played very well in their last game, despite them losing by 30 points, right? But still, this Patriots team, has, I won't say that they're good on offense because their offensive line isn't very good. And outside of a couple guys that they have on offense, it isn't great. But those guys that they do have, I really like DeMario Douglas. Hunter Henry is a decent option at tight end. And Ramondre Stevenson started off really well. Then he had a fumble problem, so he has to really take care of that. But if that's really the thing that you're worried about and he could just hold on to the ball, he's not a bad running back either. And if they're going to be run heavy with what Drake May has shown you, now you're coming into this game and facing a Jaguars defense that's giving up the most yards passing in the NFL, and that has given up the second most points per game to everybody except the Panthers, who are at 33 points per game, and the Jaguars are almost giving up 30 points per game. The way that Drake May looked, why couldn't he go out there and try and dice up this very permeable Jaguars defense? I don't think that's very crazy to say, especially with how the Jaguars have looked pretty inconsistent all year, and their bad pass defense, like I mentioned. They were very fortunate to beat the Indianapolis Colts. They almost gave up that lead that they have. But in other games, against the Bills, where they just got destroyed, and against the Browns, where they didn't get destroyed, but they only put up 13 points and only gave up 18 and still lost, obviously, both of those really stand out. And I don't think it's crazy for the Patriots to come in here playing the best offense that they have all year to at least make it a contest. And if I'm going to go outside the lines here, I think I'm going to go with the Patriots in this game. I think they could surprise a couple people. Drake May, they're going to have to win their second game eventually, right? And I don't know what other teams they play this year. Maybe they'll play the Panthers to get their second win if it's not this game. But they're not just going to finish with one win. Drake May's too good, or has looked too good for that to be the case. So I think this could be it. I think they could win their second game here. And the Jaguars, could fall into a very bad spot with that being the case. So give me the Patriots in this game. Then on the other side, the Titans and the Bills, as one-sided as it could get. I'm sorry, but there's not really too much of a discussion to have. The Bills are going to win this game in Buffalo. Amari Cooper's debut, you don't think he's going to score at least one touchdown? He's probably going to score two, and that place is going to go bananas. And this game could get a little ugly for the Titans, with Will Levis hasn't really been so convincing, and they're already 1-4. I feel like this one has loss written all over it for the Titans, so I'm going to go with the Bills. It's going to be a great debut for Amari Cooper. It's going to click right away, and on Monday we're going to be talking about the Bills, how they're like the best team in the AFC, right there with the Ravens. So I'm already predicting it. I'm already seeing it happen the following day. Then we're going to talk about also the Eagles and the Giants, and while it seems like it should be very one-sided, I wouldn't be so quick to just make that judgment. Yes, the biggest story is Saquon going back to New York, the Saquon revenge game, and while I am leaning towards the idea that Saquon's going to go off for like 2 touchdowns at least, I would be lying to say that this Eagles offense really fills me with confidence. I don't really feel that about them thus far. They've been really disappointing and just underwhelming. To have so much talent like that and still not score a single point in the first quarter is insane. And it just goes back to the coaching, the level of preparedness that they are heading into these games. And the Giants defense, they're a little stingy, right? They're a little stingy to get down, right? They're leading the league in sacks. They gave the Bengals some trouble, and I don't think the Eagles would blow out the Bengals or even guarantee that they'd win against the Bengals. So, they're right there with them. They gave the Bengals some trouble. They gave the Cowboys some trouble, and I don't think the Eagles are that much better than the Bengals. So, they're better than the Cowboys, but still, the Eagles' offense doesn't really fill me with too much confidence, but I'd be damned if I'm going to pick the Giants in this game. I just think it's too good for Saquon not to come back and just score 2 touchdowns. I'm a little nervous about it, I'm not going to lie, but the Eagles have too many weapons. To lose this game, and the Giants have been in close games, but if the Eagles are the ones that lose to them in this game, a divisional game at best, or at least in this matchup between the both of them, if you think it's going to be bad for the Jaguars the next day, it's going to be maybe even worse for the Eagles the next day if they lose this game. So they better not lose this game. I'm going to go with the Eagles. Then one of the best games, or the best game in my opinion, this week is going to be between the Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. 2 of the best teams, certainly in the NFC, but also in the NFL, with 2 offenses that are hitting on all cylinders, both really able to run the ball, both have stars all over the place, like I mentioned with the Houston and Green Bay game. What will make the difference in this game, I believe, though, will be on the defensive side of the ball, much like the Green Bay and Houston game. Which side will be able to bend but not break completely? Which one gives up field goals instead of touchdowns? I think is going to be huge in this game. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I think they stay undefeated. The loss of Aiden Hutchinson is going to hurt a lot more than I think a lot of people are really giving it credit to right now. So the Vikings defense has arguably been the best defense in the NFL, and I feel like they're very capable of bending and not breaking. And the Lions might be able to get into the red zone, but I feel like the Vikings can bunker down and just not allow them to cross the goal line, force them into passing situations, and that way I feel like the Lions defense is a little bit more permeable than the Vikings defense at this point. They're not really missing anybody that big. They're going to be at full strength, and we've already seen the Lions kind of be a bit inconsistent when it comes to the red zone. So I feel like the Vikings have that window of opportunity there, and they could certainly take advantage of it. This game being at home as well, I like the Vikings' chances in this one. So that's all the games that we have in part one. Come back tomorrow to talk about part two and the rest of the games on Sunday. But for right now, we're going to go into our next break, and when we return, we got a discussion again to talk about, this time being about the teams that need to win in Week 7. I kind of just talked about a couple of them in this segment, but we have a couple more to talk about why they absolutely need to win this game or suffer the consequences if they happen to lose. That'll be coming up in just a few seconds. Don't go anywhere.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Much like we did in the last couple segments, in this segment, we got another discussion that I wanted to bring up on today's show. Which teams are already facing must-win scenarios this week in Week 7 in the NFL? This is a fascinating time for me. I think it's a fascinating time because we're at a point where we got some great teams already in the NFL, right, that are facing off against each other, some awful teams playing against each other, and some history between some players and other players, or some players and their former teams and things like that. We're starting to see some of these narratives kind of come to fruition, right, in some of these matchups, which is exciting, but all while the trade deadline is kind of looming, it's kind of lurking in the background, right, while these games are going on. And losses in some of these games that we have coming up in Week 7, I feel like could incentivize or make the trade deadline, the idea of trading away some of your most important players, a little bit more enticing if you do happen to lose these must-win scenarios, I believe, for some of these teams, right? Looking at this week's slate of games, I believe there are certainly some must-win scenarios that these teams are facing right away for different reasons, right? It's not all the same context, but some of the must-win games and some of the teams that are facing must-win scenarios are included in this list of 5 that I have here. So we're going to start off with one game, the Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. This is a must-win game, I believe, for the 49ers because they got to get that monkey off their back. They got to get this idea that Kyle Shanahan, that Brock Purdy, that all these players on the 49ers can't run and can't beat this Kansas City Chiefs team. They got to get that off of their back, and they got to hop over that mental hurdle at this point because, yes, the Super Bowls suck. Yeah, you can't keep thinking about the idea that, oh, you gave up that comeback win in the first one, or in the second one you were so close, you were right there, and still in overtime you still lost. Is this team ever going to win a Super Bowl? Things like that, right? Just continue to pop up, especially now that you're facing off against the team that beat you twice in the Super Bowl. So they need to get over that mental hurdle. So just for themselves, personally, mentally, I think they need to win this game as a must-win. And also, San Francisco is a 500 team right now still, and I know no one's really hitting the panic button yet on them because, you have Christian McCaffrey coming back right eventually and some pieces on defense. But, there's still so much time you could really afford to give up before you're really starting to feel constricted in the later part of the season where maybe some of these games where you felt like, oh, we don't need to win them yet, we have time. You start to run out of time pretty quickly in the NFL, especially with how good the NFC is. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs or anything like that, but to be in the best scenario like they have been in previous playoff, appearances, I feel like they need to have a little bit more urgency about themselves. I saw that urgency against the Seahawks, so I'd like to see them bring it in this game. I'm sure both sides are going to be amped up for this matchup, even though no one will admit it. But I think it means a little bit more for the 49ers. They're going to be at home and everything like that. This is a must-win game for them for personal reasons, bigger or mostly more so than not. Also, this next game that I have here might not be so enticing because one team, the Raiders, are 2-4, and the other team, the Rams, are 1-4. You might be thinking, why is this a must-win, right? It's a must-win for the Los Angeles Rams because you could be getting Cooper Kupp back in this game, and if you go to 1-5, while this wouldn't be like a game-changing kind of cataclysmic win for the Raiders, right? They're still probably going to be all right this year, maybe even under 500. But for the Rams to go to 1-5, it would really feel very difficult, and you would really have a hard time convincing me that the Rams, for as good as they are when they're healthy, that they can overcome a 1-5 start and still make the playoffs with their guys coming back eventually later on in the year, right? They need to get some of these wins under their belt to just kind of stay afloat and stay above water. And, the Raiders is a game that you could certainly take with some of the injuries that you have, right? The Raiders have been just as inconsistent as everybody. They already lost Devontae Adams, their best player, and they're pretty inconsistent at quarterback, right? You don't really know what that's going to be week in and week out. So despite all those injuries, despite being 1-4 so far, I think the Rams must approach this like a must-win game to give them their best chance as we go through the season for them to be as close as possible to 500 when they play these other teams, these other divisional games, and when those guys start to come back, you're not so far behind in the race that these wins don't mean anything. They have to play for these games right now as must-wins to give them their best chance later on for those games later on to mean something, right? You don't want to just mail it in after 1-5 and just essentially give up. That really serves nobody any good, especially just giving a year away for Matthew Stafford as well. He's not really getting any younger, obviously, so to just throw away a year that you have with him would be a major, major loss for them. So they need to win this game for that reason. And I just talked about this next game, the Eagles and the Giants. The Eagles have to win this game. They have no choice. They just have to. The Saquon revenge game back in New York, the last time they played here, in fact, in week 17, I want to say, last year, the Giants actually destroyed them 27-10 before the Eagles went down to Tampa Bay and got their butts kicked again. So, there's a little bit more motivation there, right? You got embarrassed last time you came here, even though you thought it really meant nothing. You have that on your mind. Saquon, the last thing Saquon wants personally is for this Giants team to beat them, because it probably wouldn't mean anything if the Giants probably don't make the playoffs anyway, but they can just say that they beat Saquon. There's that reason, and the Eagles are just above 500 now, so you want to kind of maintain that pace of staying well above 500 in a divisional race where the Commanders are looking very good, and you don't want to fall too far behind them, and really distinguish yourself from the Cowboys as well, because the Cowboys have a rough schedule coming up. So the more you can create distance with them and keep pace with the Commanders, it's going to be huge for this Eagles team that still isn't very convincing. But if you could just get these wins, like against the Giants, where they should win because of how more talented they are than the Giants, This is a must-win for them. They have to win this game, especially with the outside talk about the interaction with Sirianni and the fans, and some of just the internal noise that you hear around the Eagles. Losing a game like this would certainly ramp everything else up again, or ramp it up even more. So, getting this game where you're expected to win, and hopefully they perform better, which would be the most ideal scenario. But the win is the most important thing. The Eagles certainly need to win this game as well. Then, very similarly again with this game, the New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Technically, but the game is in London. The Jaguars have no other choice but to win. They can't even... Sometimes it does creep up on you, the idea that, maybe we could lose this game, right? Any given Sunday. But not this game. Not to the Patriots that aren't favored in any game this year. Vegas doesn't have them favored in any game this year. I'll say it again. Not to just kick the Patriots when they're down at 1-5, but it should mean more to the Jaguars because they were thought of as a sneaky sort of underrated team this year where with Trevor Lawrence, right, everybody was excited that they extended him, right? That was the right choice to make. And the fact that you brought in Gabe Davis, the fact that Travis Etienne was coming off of a pretty decent game, a year where also you needed to see Trevor Lawrence really take that next step to validate that contract that he got. And while he hasn't been the only reason they've been losing, but the fact that they're 1-5, much like the Patriots, who are in a complete rebuild mode, and then if you lose to them, that would really do it for this Jaguars team, I believe. I feel like the next Monday we would see some pretty big moves made by their owner Shad Khan, because he had big expectations as well for this team. I think he called it the best Jaguars team that they've ever had. So if you're 1-6 and you lose to this Patriots team, it's really not going to go good for you. Losing to a rookie quarterback as well, the Jaguars must absolutely win this game. They really have no other choice. And then the last game, it'll be the Jets and the Steelers, obviously, right? New York, this is their first test with a new and improved, a new weapon, coming in, right? Devontae Adams. This is their first test to provide a victory, a much-needed win for this New York Jets team, because they've already suffered 3 losses in a row, and to suffer another one to a Steelers team that is, in kind of a gray area with their quarterbacks that necessarily hasn't blown teams away with their offense, and that their defense is good, you can give them that, but they certainly can give up some points and some yards to teams like the Cowboys, right? And the Jets certainly want to be in that next level of kind of contending teams. So this is a game, now that you have all of Aaron Rodgers' guys there, right? Devontae, Allen Lazard, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, everybody and anything that the Jets could have asked for, they have it now. So you can't drop your first game and drop to 2-5. That just can't happen. And if the Steelers lose this game, they're going to be 4-3, and they're still going to be all right. But the Jets at 2-5 in a pretty tough AFC, they can't afford to lose this game, especially with all that it has been made up of this Adams trade. So those are all the scenarios. Those are all the teams, right? The 49ers, the Rams, the Eagles, the Jaguars, and the Jets all are facing must-win scenarios this week, and we'll see on Sunday if all of those teams can go 5 for 5, or we're going to come back on here on Monday and discuss which teams failed in their quest to get these must-win games and what's going to happen next if they do happen to lose. So we're going to talk about that on Monday, but for right now, in the last segment of today's show, we're going to focus in on the NFC North division for one quick second and talk about how great all of them are playing, but also which team in that division gives us the most confidence that they're legit contenders, right? They're not just kind of hanging around because they haven't faced each other yet. Which team are we most confident in that is going to have the most success in 2024? We're going to answer that question when we return after this break. Thank you guys for joining me here on this last segment of today's show. Really wanting to shine a light on the NFC North here a little bit. And not to say that it hasn't been talked about, because I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear that this division has been the best division in all of the NFL so far. And when we previewed this season and talked about this division, right, I'm pretty sure I had the Packers winning it, and I had the Lions in second, then the Vikings in third, and I had the Bears finishing last for the reason that they were just getting together and all of that, right? But no way could you have ever convinced me, or I ever would have imagined, that this division would be this good already through 6 weeks of the NFL season, right? The division as a whole, to give you guys some context, has a record of 17-5 so far, the best division record clearly this year, but it's also the best of any division through 6 weeks of a season since 1970. So they're doing historical things individually, but also as a collective, right, and how well they're all playing so far. And we knew that the Lions were going to be in this race, right, because of the year that they had last year. We hyped up the Packers, right? I had them winning this division because I felt like Jordan Love was going to be on his MVP journey to really being a candidate and a top 3 guy in this league, in the NFL. And it's unfortunate that he got hurt, but we're starting to see the Packers kind of pick it up a little bit more and pick up where they left off really last year from these last couple games. And elsewhere, the Vikings, you never would have imagined that Sam Darnold was going to step in and really look like the top draft pick that the Jets got, or they thought they were getting, but never really developed into that until now. We're seeing it right now with Kevin O'Connell alongside Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and all these guys, right? Jordan Addison. It's great to see, right? It's great for Sam Darnold, like good for him to find this situation that really benefits him. They're still undefeated. And the Chicago Bears also, they're 4-2 with a rookie quarterback that a lot of people, just based on the recency bias, that everybody has to be C.J. Stroud or they're going to be a complete bust, right? We saw Caleb struggle in a couple of games already against the Titans, where they didn't score a touchdown on offense, and against the Colts, where he threw a couple interceptions. We're still only 6 weeks in for Caleb Williams in his entire career, and now people are thinking like, oh wow, like he finally, is showing us what he's capable of. We're only 6 games in, and it's still super early, but because people want to see C.J. Stroud, like I said again, Jaden Daniels, all credit to him, people think that it's that easy just to step in and be this revolutionary quarterback. And again, credit to Jaden Daniels for doing it, but it's not to discredit how long it might take Caleb, maybe longer games than it has Jaden Daniels, right? But we're now seeing, I believe, that this offense is finding their groove. Caleb is seeing the field a lot better, and he's making some big-time throws. He's really commanding this offense in a way that's exciting, that really gets a lot of Bears fans more optimistic than they ever have been over the last, decade pretty much. So all these teams are playing very well, and the Vikings are still undefeated. The Lions were the least surprising, obviously, with what they did last year. Green Bay, their potential, we knew about them, and I just mentioned Chicago as well. And what's even more exciting about the fact that we know that all these teams are good is that they barely have played each other so far in 2024, right? They really haven't seen each other other than Week 4 when the Vikings beat the Packers in what was an insane game where the Packers almost came back there towards the end, but the Vikings were able to close it out. And this upcoming week, we have the Vikings again playing against the Detroit Lions in another divisional game as well. And that game's probably going to be just as great as the Packers game with the Vikings. So still, within divisional games, they haven't really played each other yet, and we haven't really seen them match up against each other quite yet, other than the Vikings getting the first 2 matchups. We still have to see the Bears and how they host the Packers, how they host the Vikings potentially, or the Lions play against the Bears as well. And, the Lions play against the Packers too. We haven't seen any of these games yet, and those are still to come, and what makes it more exciting on how these games could play out. And not only that, we could really see and kind of help us answer this question, right? Which NFC North team are we most confident in going forward? It's hard to answer that when they haven't played each other, but so far, we're going to try to answer it now after 6 weeks in the NFL. And I think it's fair to say, for as much as I love the Bears and I love what Caleb Williams is doing, I'm a big fan of his. I feel like they would be the least I'm confident in of this division just because they're starting everything up right now. It's looking great, but I feel like there's more hiccups to come later on in the year, right? I just feel like it's natural for rookie quarterbacks to find new problems, new hurdles that they have to overcome and kind of fall and get back up from before they really, in year 2, much like CJ, are really starting to look a lot more polished. So I feel like the Bears could be at number 4 right now for which team I'm most confident in. They would be at number 4 in this division. And then the next 3 teams are almost impossible to really decide from, right? Because they all match up so well with each other. They're all like different iterations of the same very well-built team, right? We're talking about the running game that all of them have. Really good to exceptional offensive lines for all of these guys. Quarterbacks that are playing as good as anybody. Defenses also that are very underrated as well. It's hard to make a real solidified choice, right? Because all these teams, like the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings are so well put together that it was really hard for me to make a decision. But I think at number 3, for the time being right now, based on everything we know, I think the Lions would be number 3 for me. And that might be a little bit shocking, blasphemous maybe, because the Lions were just in the NFC Championship game. But I really don't like Aiden Hutchinson going down with that season-ending injury. That's a huge needle mover for me, basically, because I can't really think of a team being great, being a Super Bowl contending team, if they don't have anybody to get to the quarterback. Say you're playing in the Super Bowl, right, and you have nobody getting to Patrick Mahomes, you're going to lose that game. You're 100% you're going to lose that game, right, if you can't make Patrick or make Lamar, make these guys uncomfortable, right, with any sort of pass rush. And not having a guy like Aiden is huge. So that's why it's really like a factor that is holding me back from really believing in the Lions, because I am a big fan of them. But that's really such a big injury that until they address it in some way, I can't really 100% be behind them yet. So I'm going to go with number 3 for them as a team that I have most confident in terms of winning this division and going the furthest in the playoffs. Then at number 2, I'm going to go with the Packers, because I believe that we're just kind of seeing them get into their groove right now because of the fact that Jordan Love was injured and now is coming back and now is looking a little bit more settled in. They're kind of over that whole weird scenario with Romeo Doubs. They kind of got over that. So having Romeo, having Christian Watson, Jaden Reed is looking awesome. And, Josh Jacobs still as well. They have all the pieces there that Matt LaFleur can put together in an offense that is very well put together schematically, has a great game plan week in and week out. And on the defensive side of the ball, while Jair might get a lot of the attention based on the name, Xavier McKinney is awesome. He's an awesome player for them. I knew that it was going to be a great replacement. I guess I kind of predicted it a little bit that he was going to be good for them, but I didn't think he was going to have 5 interceptions already. He's been a great addition to their defense, and I think the Packers are, they have they're not drastically missing something like the Lions are. So I have a little bit more confidence in them for that reason, but obviously that leaves the Vikings at number 1, and I think they have everything going for them, except maybe Aaron Jones staying healthy. He got hurt this past week, and it looked a little bit dodgy there in the second half. But other than that, the Vikings, looking up and down this roster, their offensive line is awesome. Justin Jefferson, you don't have to really make too much of a case for him. Jordan Addison is a great number 2. Sam Darnold is playing very well. Until I see him kind of fail and not perform like he has, I can't just say that I can't expect him to continue this because this is the only thing I've seen so far. So he's playing great. Their offensive line, like I said, is very good. On defense, they added Jonathan Grenard. Dallas Turner is very good, who they drafted. They added Blake Cashman. He's very good as their middle linebacker. Stephon Gilmore, a underrated addition to this team. I'm blanking. Brian Flores calling as good of a defense as anybody as well. So you can't really point to a major flaw that they have up until now. And that's why I feel like I would have the most confidence in them so far, because they've already beaten the 49ers. They've already beaten the Texans as well. So it's not to say that they haven't faced great teams. They've beaten great teams already. So this upcoming week is going to be another test. But I feel like they're the most complete out of anybody in this NFC North right now. And I am a believer in Sam Darnold. So if that's what's holding you back, I would just say, keep watching, because I feel like Kevin O'Connell is really the mastermind behind all of this. And I'm not going to doubt Kevin O'Connell with all these weapons that they have. And still, they have TJ Hawkinson to come back. So, if we thought this offense was good, they're going to have a top 3 tight end coming back for them in a couple of weeks. So, they're a legit team, I feel like. And while it's surprising to kind of accept that now, I feel like they're just going to continue to prove it. So the Vikings are the team that I have the most confidence in the NFC North. Let me know if you guys agree with that, or if you guys think I'm out of my mind or something like that. But that's who I'm going with right now, and that'll do it for today's show. We're going to get out of here. We're going to go watch Thursday Night Football, but thank you guys for watching today's show. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. And if you want to check out more of the Chip Shot Football podcast, check out both YouTube channels to find more content around this show in a variety of different ways. And tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more of the live shows where we talk about the NFL, debate some things, discuss some other things, and go over the biggest headlines with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thank you guys again, and we'll be back tomorrow to discuss Thursday Night Football and close out the week.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that